So then getting to some other general discussion points, and I feel like maybe we're saving some of the best for last. You can't talk about the Nintendo 64 and its reveal pre-release without talking about the controller. You can talk about iconic controllers, and I think a lot of people lean into NES just because it's like the first one that people said, this is what a game controller should be. And Super Nintendo kind of just made some overall improvements with the corners and all that. N64 just said, hold my joystick. I'm going to make some decisions that even to this day, some people don't know how to hold the damn thing. What was your guys' first impression when you saw that there's two corners, but then there's a thing sticking out, there's a button in the back, and there's a joystick in the middle? What the hell was your reaction?
I still don't know how my mind wrapped itself around the trident and where that design came from. Because, I mean, it's just so out there. Like, I that is one design meeting I would have loved to been a fly on the wall of, to say, like, okay, well, we need three shafts, and then we're going to have Z buttons, and we're going to have C buttons, and we're going to have A, B buttons, and a stick. Like, it really was just throwing things against a wall and hoping to God it's stuck on the controller. It's such a fascinating thing to look back at, and Nintendo didn't stop with that. Like, the GameCube controller is even more insane, right?
But at least it didn't have three shafts.
The ergonomics were better, but it was still...
Yeah.
The Z
I feel
trigger.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when they designed
this thing, it's insane.
Yeah.
The damn joystick.
I feel like when the DualShock came out, however long after that was released for the PlayStation, they must have just been like, oh, we could have done that, huh? You know, we can have a stick and a D-pad and not need three shafts. I'm gonna keep using that word
because that's what they are. This is a tri-shaft on that N64 controller. Shaft 1, Shaft 2, Shaft 3.
Yeah. So
well, no fact, that was actually the original name, the tri-shaft. No, it wasn't.
Yeah. But you know, you see the three shafts and it's a little intimidating. I got to be honest with you. But once you grip onto that thing, it's a lot more comfortable than you'd expect.
Mm-hmm. It's true, and I see what you did there, and I'm really going to lean into it and saying, like, I thought that it would be more difficult to grip onto that thing and hurt your hands, but really it was the only design flaw I would say that the tri-shaft had was the joystick and the fact that sometimes you had to just rub your palm around it, and in some games and you would get calluses on your hand from rubbing the shaft.
Yeah. Sometimes you'd have a little party and you'd be rubbing that thing and burn your hand. But after the first party, you learned your lesson, because at the second party, you didn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, the shaft was a little bit nicer.
But in all seriousness, I will say with the N64 controller, I think the most underutilized aspect of that was the D-pad, because I think they just had the mindset that, okay, if you ever play a 2D game, you can hold on to the far left end and then play with the D-pad, like if you were playing just a 2D platform or something. But we saw, like, in errors later, like PS2 and beyond, and not really GameCube, I guess, but the D-pad could have been utilized for 3D games to just be like equipment buttons and things like you know what I mean, secondary buttons that they could have used, but they never utilized it. So that was just one thing I felt like was a missed opportunity. Was, okay, if there's some sort of passive action when you're not in the heat of the moment, you could take your hand off of the joystick and actually use the D-pad for just to have extra buttons for a game. So that was kind of an unfortunate thing that I wish they had utilized more. But other than that, it looks really weird, but it's not that bad of a controller in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the D-pad kind of became the I don't know how to control the camera, so it's either the C buttons or the D-pad or a variation of both, and it just made it awkward to control. Like, I think it's we can have an episode, and we've talked about this in when we were still a cast of the past about some of the best and worst game controllers, but I would argue this is both simultaneously. From a nostalgic standpoint, you look at that Trident and you could not have a more memorable controller, especially for those that grew up in the 90s. So nostalgia talking, it's like, hey, that is at the very tippy top. But if you talk about functionality, then it becomes like, I mean, with the GameCube, they kind of made it better, but even the GameCube still struggled a little bit with that. But then another topic that's tied into the controller is the ports. So I really do think that one of the biggest benefits that the N64 had over the PS1 is you look at the console, it doesn't have 2 controller ports, it has 4. And even though the PS1, you could get the multi-tap, it was still like, the games weren't really meant for that. Whereas the N64, the whole concept is, hey, it's not just 2 people playing. You know, you got to have over 12 different shafts in that action. So what did you guys think of the fact that we had 4 ports and everything that came with it?
That was what basically helped the N64 exponentially, was the 4 controller ports. Because like you said, the multi-tap existed for the PlayStation, but it was like a myth almost. It was like there was maybe like 2 kids at school that had the multi-tap. And what games did you play? You know, I think there was some Crash Party games, but anyway, not everyone had them.
Hey, we really hope you enjoyed this podcast clip. And if you did, guess what? You can listen to the full episode right now by searching for Quest Rewind on your favorite podcast app, including Spotify. And while you're at it, follow us over there so you never miss a new episode.